Other guys had more raw talent, but nobody on earth could out-prepare me. And because of that, I walk away with absolutely zero regrets. This was the exact moment Peyton Manning ceased to be Peyton Manning the quarterback. For nearly 20 years, the game was his entire identity. Then, it vanished. It is brutal to watch. The guy is clearly hurting. Let's be honest, Peyton just is not healthy. On TV, it looked perfect. But behind closed doors, insiders tell a completely different story. Subscribe now as you and I break down what really happened. His body finally paid the price. By the final stretch of the 2015 season, Peyton Manning was fighting a war against his own failing physical frame. After the final whistle, the pain was so agonizing it took him 15 minutes just to peel off his pads. His skin was a map of bruises. 18 years of hard planting, pivoting, and taking brutal hits left his toes completely mangled, bent into shapes that did not even look human anymore. He was hobbling everywhere. His right heel suffered a partially torn plantar fascia, an agonizing injury that players describe as literally walking on shards of broken glass. Every single step sent a sharp, stabbing shock straight up his leg. And the most terrifying part? None of this was actually new to him. This physical toll had been mounting for a decade. By 2015, he could no longer mask it. But his feet were just the tip of the iceberg. The real nightmare was his neck. That damage started 9 years earlier in 2006 with one catastrophic hit. Let us trace this back to '98, when Indianapolis took him #1 overall. Stepping into that locker room at just 22, he immediately built a winning culture, turning the Colts into a powerhouse and racking up MVP awards. He shattered passing records, put the team on his back for a Super Bowl ring in 2006, and remained the face of Indianapolis for 14 seasons. He literally was Indianapolis football. He looked completely bulletproof, ruling the league with commercials, records, and endless wins. It seemed like he had cracked the code of the NFL. But underneath the surface, his body was fracturing. In 2006, Washington defensive end Philip Daniels delivered a hit that herniated a disc in Peyton's neck. He chose to play through it, but that damaged disc never healed the way it was supposed to. Over the next few seasons, the wear and tear escalated, and that herniated disc began pinching vital nerves. His throwing arm started losing strength, his fingers went numb, and blinding pain shot through his upper body. Yet, he still suited up every week. He kept tossing touchdowns, crushing press conferences, and filming those famous commercials. Absolutely nobody in the public eye had any clue how bad things were getting. By 2010, the wheels were coming off. His grip strength was failing, his trademark throwing velocity was declining, and those neurological symptoms were rapidly getting worse. Then came 2011, the season that very nearly ended his legendary career for good. In early 2011, Manning underwent a specialized neck surgery to relieve the pressure on those pinched nerves. Everyone involved hoped this single operation would solve the crisis once and for all. It failed. The muscle weakness and loss of grip persisted. Before long, doctors had to go back in for a second decompression procedure. The goal remained the same: restore the nerve pathways and save his arm. But once again, it failed. His throwing power was gone, and the numbness remained. Later that year, surgeons performed a massive anterior cervical fusion, a heavy-duty procedure where they sliced through the front of his neck to remove the disc completely. They replaced it with a bone graft, securing the vertebrae with a titanium plate and heavy screws. That was his third major surgery, with some reports hinting at a fourth. Regardless of the count, Peyton had been sliced open repeatedly in a single offseason. When he finally woke up, the immediate reality was downright terrifying. Waking up from one operation, he tried to prop himself up in the hospital bed. His right arm collapsed instantly. He could not even support his own body weight. Think about that. His golden throwing arm, which had generated historic numbers on the field, could not even push his torso off a mattress. If you are loving this story, hit like. This was not just about missing games. This was pure, unadulterated fear that his playing days were done, and his right arm would remain permanently paralyzed. He sat out the entire 2011 season without taking a snap. Behind the scenes, he could barely wobble a football 5 yards downfield. His own brother Eli reportedly thought it was over. Whispers inside the front office and around the league all said the exact same thing. A first-ballot Hall of Famer, cooked at age 35, it felt like 4 surgeries and a prayer. And while the sports media and fans quickly moved on to the next headline, while commentators debated who would replace him and fans accepted they had seen the last of number 18, Peyton was grinding away in an empty gym, desperately trying to teach his dead arm how to throw again. The post-op nerve damage had completely robbed his fingertips of basic sensation. The neurological link between his brain and his right hand was severed. He literally had to rebuild his mechanics from the absolute ground up. Wrist position, elbow mechanics, his follow-through, and the release point, every single detail. Actions he had performed since tossing backyard spirals in New Orleans as a kid, instincts honed over decades on the gridiron, were suddenly gone. He had to rebuild them, one incredibly painful repetition at a time. When he finally opened up about that dark period to the media, he did not sugarcoat a single thing. Speaking during his grueling rehab process, Manning put the brutal reality into perspective, noting how long it takes just for the bones to fuse. Doctors told him that phase takes up to 3 months, but uniting the bone was only half the war. Healing the nerve damage operates on a completely unpredictable timeline. Yeah, he still faced the exact same intense neurological issues after the fusion. While titanium plates and heavy screws could easily anchor his spine in place, biological nerves only heal on their own highly unpredictable schedule, if they actually recover at all. No surgeon can accelerate that process, and there is absolutely no magic pill to cure it. You either get the feeling back, or you do not. Manning lived with that terrifying uncertainty daily. If you respect the grind, hit subscribe. What makes this chapter of Peyton Manning's life so staggering and so agonizing is the brutal contradiction at its core. Let's look at a legendary playmaker who had mastered the NFL like nobody before him. This was a player who watched more game film than his own coaches. A mastermind whose whole career was built on meticulous preparation, control, and absolute precision. Yet suddenly, his own body became the one thing he could not control. Manning could study every playbook on earth, but he could not force the damaged nerves in his fingertips to fire again. He could not make his throwing arm strong through sheer willpower. He was trapped inside a betraying frame, and his only option was to sit back and wait. Throughout that grueling rehab, whenever reporters pressed him about a comeback, he was painfully honest about how much he missed the game. He missed the daily grind, the rush of barking signals on Sunday afternoons, and knowing exactly what the defense would do because he had spent 90 hours preparing for it. Manning insisted that if he got the medical green light, he would jump at the chance. He literally told reporters, "If the doctors say yes, I am playing, because that is how I am wired." That exact mindset tells us everything we need to know about his greatness, and also why his physical frame ultimately gave out under the pressure. He was built to battle through agony, built to outwork everyone else, built to never quit, and that kind of obsessive drive does not come with an off switch. Even as medical experts urged caution and his throwing arm buckled under the weight of a simple pass, he was already plotting his comeback. "This is my job," he said, "and I miss not being able to do it." We were watching a superstar in genuine anguish. Not the fake drama of a post-game interview, but the quiet agony that comes when your life's purpose is stripped away with no guarantee of its return. And during that painful limbo, while he waited for his nerves to heal and his throwing power to return, the franchise he had served for 14 years was plotting a move that would alter NFL history. The Indianapolis Colts were preparing to break their icon's heart. If you and I look deeper, there is a hidden layer to this tragedy. Peyton was not just battling a brutal neck injury, he was fighting his own genetic. He was born with a congenital spinal condition, an inherited weakness. His older brother Cooper suffered from the exact same issue, which tragically ended his football dreams before they could even begin. Cooper was a dominant high school wideout, heavily recruited by the University of Mississippi before a spinal stenosis diagnosis made playing far too dangerous. He never played one snap of college ball. Peyton had witnessed his brother's career get stolen by a spinal issue. Now, years later, that same family curse threatened to destroy his own career. Then came the day the Colts cut him. On March 7th, 2012, the Indianapolis Colts released Peyton Manning. The front office math was brutal and clinical. Manning had just missed an entire season due to his injury. He had endured multiple neck surgeries. His legendary arm remained a giant question mark, and the Colts were facing a looming $28 million roster bonus that would kick in if he remained on the team past their deadline. Meanwhile, they held the #1 draft pick in 2012, with a generational prospect named Andrew Luck waiting in the wings. From a business perspective, the choice was obvious. Hand $28 million to an aging legend with a damaged neck, or draft a 22-year-old phenom to be the next face of your franchise? Indianapolis chose the 22-year-old, and Manning understood the math. He had been in this league long enough to know it is a business first. But knowing the business in your head and accepting it in your heart are two very different things. The press conference announcing his release was one of the most heartbreaking moments in league history. Manning stood at the microphone in a sharp suit, fighting back tears. His voice cracked. His eyes welled up with emotion. He spoke about the city of Indianapolis like a partner mourning a broken marriage. And honestly, that is exactly what it felt like. He admitted the split weighed heavily on his soul. 14 years of loyalty, 14 years of building an empire together, 14 years of perfect dedication, and it all ended with a cold financial calculation. The media kept using the word divorce to describe the split, and that comparison was painfully accurate. This was not an amicable split between two sides who simply drifted apart. This was one partner deciding to walk away while the other was still recovering in a hospital bed. Manning never wanted out. He wanted to heal, throw touchdowns, win championships, and eventually retire in a Colts uniform. But that choice was stripped away. Adding insult to injury was what happened next. Without their star quarterback, the Colts collapsed, finishing the 2011 season with a dismal 2-14 record. Just 2 wins and 14 losses, the absolute worst record in the NFL. But that failure secured them the top draft pick to select Andrew Luck. In a cruel twist of fate, Manning's injury and absence paved the way for the team's future. His broken neck literally purchased their next franchise quarterback. But behind the scenes of his surgeries, the release, and the heartbreak, a toxic narrative had been stalking Manning for his entire career like a dark shadow he could never shake. The choker label, despite putting up mind-blowing regular season numbers, including a record 55 touchdowns in 2013, his playoff performances remained a target for constant criticism. His playoff record as a starter sat at 14 wins and 13 losses. For an elite passer, the media deemed that ratio completely unacceptable. He endured devastating early playoff exits, like the shocking 2005 divisional loss to Pittsburgh as the #1 seed, alongside multiple agonizing defeats against Tom Brady and New England. The narrative was utterly relentless. Peyton Manning was painted as a regular season titan, but a postseason choke artist, a stat sheet king who could shred defenses in October but supposedly crumbled under the freezing pressure of January playoff football. It was incredibly lazy and completely unfair. Deep dive analytics proved the critics were cherry-picking stats rather than using actual facts. But you and I both know sports media does not care about fairness. Perception is reality, and millions believed he was not a winner. Be sure to hit like and subscribe as we look at his final ride. Peyton Manning's first 2 seasons in Denver were a massive statement to anyone who thought he was done. In 2012, fresh off major neck surgeries, he racked up 37 touchdowns and guided the Broncos to a dominant 13-3 record. The league was absolutely stunned. We were watching a veteran quarterback with a fused neck and numb fingers play at an elite level. The critics went silent. The playoff choking narrative completely vanished. Manning was officially back, and 2013 was about to be legendary. Manning tossed 55 touchdowns that year, setting a historic league record. That Denver offense operated like a relentless, high-powered machine. He was operating at the line of scrimmage like a chess grandmaster, manipulating defenses with absolute ease, dismantling opposing coverages with pure intellect because his arm could no longer rely on sheer velocity. It was a masterclass in elite adaptation. He had lost the physical weapons of his youth, replacing them with a brilliant football intellect no surgeon could ever touch. But even a genius mind has its limits when the body breaks down, and by 2014, the cracks were showing. His arm strength, which never truly recovered from those neck surgeries, took a massive nosedive. Passes that once arrived as tight spirals now fluttered through the air with a wobble that safeties could read from 10 yards out. The man was battling a torn quad, severe rib soreness, and persistent nerve damage in his neck and throwing hand. His physical frame was held together by nothing but medical tape, cortisone, and sheer will. Then 2015 arrived, and the wheels fell off. His final campaign was statistically the absolute worst stretch of his legendary career. Through the first 9 weeks, he tossed just 9 scores to a whopping 17 interceptions, 9 scores and 17 picks. For a passer who had recently thrown 55 touchdowns in a single year, those stats were simply mind-boggling. And these turnovers were not just bad decisions. They were the tragic result of an arm that could no longer execute his brain's commands. He would spot the open receiver, plant his feet, release, and the ball would float like a wounded duck straight into the hands of a waiting defender. The whole world saw it. That arm, which once fired strikes with surgical precision, had suddenly become what media and former players openly called a noodle. There are egos involved, sure, and Manning is a legend. But we all saw that noodle arm last season. That single word defined his entire 2015 campaign. Not his legendary status, not the records, not the miraculous comeback from those surgeries. The noodle. His physical talent was breaking down on national television week after week. with absolutely nowhere for him to hide. To make matters worse, his foot was deteriorating. The plantar fasciitis he was battling worsened into a brutal partial tear of the plantar fascia every single time he tried to plant and throw. Excruciating pain surged through his heel. The guy was basically playing quarterback on one leg and one arm, with numb fingers and a fused neck that barely turned. It was a physical horror show masked by a Denver uniform. By week 10, the Broncos made the call. Manning was benched. The sports media erupted when Brock Osweiler took over. You and I both saw what went down over those first 9 games, and the debate was absolutely wild. We saw 9 touchdowns and 17 interceptions. That was the cold, hard reality on the field. There was simply no spinning this. The stats did not lie, and if you want more deep dive breakdowns like this, hit that like button. His body had hit its breaking point. It was honestly painful to watch. Seeing a future Hall of Famer wearing a baseball cap on the sideline while a backup took his snaps was a tough pill to swallow. It was devastating. But as the saying goes, I would rather leave a year too early than a year too late. I wanted everyone to believe I still had it, even when I did not. That statement hit right at the center of this tragedy. The perfect exit in sports is walking away while fans are still begging you to stay. Manning never got that luxury. He stayed until his body broke, and then pushed past even that. By the time of his benching, the football world had witnessed the decline. The floating passes, the turnovers, the limp, and that noodle arm. The painful reality of his decline had already played out in millions of American homes. But this chapter did not end on the bench. Osweiler went down, opening the door for one final Manning comeback. Subscribe to the channel as we witness this crazy turn of events. Backed by a historic, championship-caliber Broncos defense, they marched all the way to the big game. And a battered Manning somehow walked away with a Super Bowl 50 ring against Carolina. He did not carry that team, and everyone on earth knew it. That historic defense won them the title. But Manning was still the quarterback of record when the final whistle blew, the confetti rained down, and the Lombardi Trophy was raised. It was his second ring and his last. Weeks after Super Bowl 50, the legendary signal caller took the podium one final time. Not to analyze game tape, not to orchestrate a game-winning drive, but to say his final goodbyes. Others had more raw talent, but nobody could out-prepare me. That was the core of his greatness. It was never about raw gifts, it was about relentless work. That work ethic fueled 18 seasons, 4 most valuable player awards, and more records than we could list. If you appreciate his greatness, drop a like on this video. And because of that, I have no regrets. He cited 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 7, saying he fought the good fight and finished the race. I have kept the faith, 0 regrets. When you and I review this incredible story, through the surgeries, the benching, the noodle arm, and the criticism, we see a legend who walked away with absolutely no regrets. Peyton once said football taught him to be led by dreams, not setbacks. But then we hit the moment that landed the hardest. It was the turning point where Manning stopped looking back and started looking forward. His life was not shrinking. Instead, it was opening up. Let's analyze that statement together for a moment, especially given everything we just went over. Here is a quarterback whose body was systematically battered over 18 years of professional football. A man who lost feeling in his fingertips. His toes were bent and twisted. This legendary passer spent 15 minutes just trying to peel off his uniform because of the agony. Yet, he stood at the podium and declared his life was expanding. When asked about running for office, his response was classic Manning. Negative. Absolutely negative on that. No politics, and no front office job. He believed his biggest mistake would be rushing in and regretting it immediately. He wanted to take his time and get it right. In 2020, Manning launched Omaha Productions, a media company named after his iconic pre-snap audible call on the field. They immediately started churning out original sports content, documentaries, and live events, quickly becoming a gold standard for athlete-led media ventures. The crown jewel of his media empire is the Manningcast, an alternate broadcast where Peyton and Eli analyze the game, chat with celebrity guests, and make watching primetime football feel like hanging out with family. Beyond Omaha, Manning co-hosted the 2024 Country Music Awards. He also produces massive Netflix documentary series, including hits like Quarterback and Receiver. We still see him on the sidelines in Denver and Tennessee, and he is closely watching his nephew, Arch, quarterback the Longhorns. He broadcasts the game from Denver, just 10 minutes away from his family, making sure he is home before his kids sleep. Without question, Manning has built an incredible post-career life. Yet, the physical toll of 18 NFL seasons remains written on his body. That numbness in his fingers never went away. His toes are battered from years of turf wars, and his neck is fused with metal. He lives with constant daily aches from thousands of brutal hits absorbed over nearly 20 years. The physical bill has come due permanently. The game took things from his physical frame that it will never return. And as observers, we know that part is undeniably tough to watch. So, let's look at this together. Can one painful loss truly haunt an athlete forever, regardless of their legacy? Drop your take in the comments below. If you want more deep dives into NFL history, make sure to watch our next video.